when you prioritize the human capital side and really trying to earmark a portion of your operational spend towards your team, right? And I'm not talking about like the pizza party stuff, like just having an investment and being able to do things as a group together off property. That's always been just like a non-negotiable, is like.
Welcome back to the Future of Hospitality. This episode is part of our special series, Unscripted Hospitality, where we really just talk honestly, without filters, and just about the industry and also the people behind the scenes. And today's episode is powered by Alhai, a leading global sales organization representing the world's finest luxury hotels and resorts. And this episode is really special to me because today I'm joined by Dieter Schmitz, and someone that I've known for a while and someone whose journey is pretty unique, right? From Laguna Beach, the Rio Orange County, 20 years ago, to building a real career, very successful career in hospitality, where there is a lot of beneath the surface that we can, really excited to unpack. So Dieter, really appreciate you being here. What a cool conversation, especially knowing you for a while. And I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot about you that, we never had the opportunity to discuss.
Yeah, man, it's really, really nice to see you. And it's been a couple years, so I was really excited to get a chance to catch up and chat. It's a crazy time right now, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and you always keep looking better and better. So
I
you're
try to beat your hair, which is it's a losing proposition, but I try.
That's funny, and it's interesting, Dieter, because as we've been talking about connecting for a little bit, and just happens to align nicely with your 20th reunion. And I was watching some of the interviews on the red carpet with you and some of your, fellow cast members, and so 20 years, and like when you look back at that time in your life, like what parts of that experience, help still shapes who you are today, and perhaps what part, if any, you had to kind of let it go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a crazy experience because they came when we were 18, some younger really. And we really just thought, it was something fun to do in high school. No one's gonna watch this. And um, we got like I think we got like $2,000 for it, and we were like, haha, look at us, we're rich. And I think, what happened immediately after, I think, was nothing that we were prepared for. And the first episode aired my first week of college, and I think it really changed the trajectory of having a normal college experience. But also, we were lifelong friends from first, second grade. So you really started to revert towards each other. And that was like your safe space. You had these relationships, you got through it. I filmed for 3 years for 2 seasons. And it was just like an amazing experience. I think there's pros and cons, right? But for me, it was like, my safe space was hotels. Like I started in hotels at 15. When the show was on, I still worked in hotels. When the show ended, I still worked in hotels, and it was like that was where I could go to have a career I loved. People that I think, like, this hospitality has always been just an amazing fit for me because it's a social business, and I love leading, and I love culture focused leadership, and so I think I really like leaned in hard to the hotel space and saying like, look, this thing's gonna pass. I want this career. There's people from our show that did an amazing job, doing other shows after and still doing shows today. But for me, it was like it was a fun experience, but I was really, really eager to get out of it. So when this opportunity came, it wasn't like a shoe in, like, let's do it. I think it was like a lot of thought put into it. Obviously we have families, we have, I have a great wife and kids. And the only way you would really do it again is if you could close that chapter and do it right with the right people, and everyone had to do it. The producers are Lauren Conrad and Steven and Kristen from our show. So knowing that they're producing and they can do this the right way, I think was really important. But it just like it felt like the right time. It's been 20 years, and so it was a great experience. We filmed for like 4 days, and then um, Friday it airs for the world. And I think you're consistently kind of blown away by the base that that show had. When the reunion came up, I was like, would anyone even watch this thing? And then when we did the premiere, there's 300-400 people there, and you're seeing like millions of views on the trailer, and you're like, okay, well, I guess they will. So yeah, it felt like a really cool way to close that chapter and officially close it, because there will never be another time that whole crew will do this again. I can guarantee you. So it really felt like a cool closure of the chapter.
Mm. And how was, because I know many of you are pretty close and you never really lost touch and you kept the relationship going, to your point, a lot of, I think even going through the journey, even if the distance, having each other to relate and connect with. But how was to get together of 20 years? Was it kind of fairly natural and it kind of became fluid right away? Or I don't know, was anything unique?
Yeah,
Or
it was, they were really smart because they brought back one of the cameramen who was our original cameraman. So like when I was getting ready and I turned around, I was like, Sham, and he's like, Dieter. I'm like, oh my God, from 20 years ago. The creator of Laguna Beach came back as an executive producer, so she was there. So you were like immediately surrounded by like a lot of comfort zones, which was really smart. Um, I talked to Stephen, Trey, Lauren probably numerous times a week. So like going back with them was totally normal. But then there was people like, I hadn't seen for 20 years. And so I think that was the first hellos were a little interesting and awkward. And then you just kind of dive right back in. But I think we all said like we were so surprised how quickly you dive back into it. And it was kind of like how we felt when we were 18, 19, 20. Is it was the first show that was like a reality concept, but we never acknowledged the cameras. We didn't do confessionals. I think confessionals can be like a really lazy way of like telling a story where you're talking about other people. We never did that. And so um this was the first time where we were kind of like sitting down and on a stage setting, which was different. But I think, I think everyone's going to see it was really just a light, funny. There's some really good stories. And then, like it gets really emotional there. There's like, since the show aired, a lot of our parents have passed away, and you kind of can see them on the show still. So I think it was a lot heavier than I was expecting as well. But I think everyone snapped back into it really, really quickly. But I think that's the important part, is that we're all united that this was it and we're not going to do it again ever. Because then it can be like, well, what's next?
yeah, that is interesting. And you were 18, right, at the time of the
Yeah.
filming? Yeah.
Yeah.
How, I don't know, how did you stay grounded? Because to your point, you guys became pretty well known, pretty famous. It was, the beginning of kind of reality, this genre that now is so popular. There's so many shows, but it was really a captive audience. And I recall from our previous conversations years ago, we used to go and you're hired to do appearances in clubs or whatever else. So at that young, how you don't lose yourself? How did you stay grounded?
I think that's where the friends came in good. Anytime any of us started getting a little inflated, we would knock each other down quite hard. um and then I was like, it's a reality show. You're not famous for being an actor or anything, and you keep yourself modest on that. And the appearances that was a very crazy thing to go through, but it was also like, there was it's pretty lonely. You're like out on the road by yourself, and you're going to these random cities, and everyone's celebrating you because of a TV show, nothing to do with yourself, right? So I think you kind of there's this weird thing about it where you you couldn't really date, you couldn't do much of anything other than just like do these appearances, have your friend group, and then stay focused on the career. I think for me, it was like hotels was, if it came up, I would talk about it. But it was like just earn your own career, earn your own destiny. Um, but you also like you can't ignore that this was a huge part of your life. And I think for me, I really like this reunion because it's like the first time like on LinkedIn or anything I can even acknowledge it, but I could also, kind of say like, hey, this is a cool chapter and we're closing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. And it's kudos to you. I think perhaps being hotels, you mentioned you started at 15 and having that exposure, having that real life grounding, was that what also helped you to have the realization that, hey, I need to keep building something that's real, perhaps that's something that's more lasting than what and these opportunities could have led you to.
Yeah, I think so. I always loved hotels, so it was like even, when you were being able to travel, it was um I noticed like as a younger traveler you were kind of treated differently, and I always just wanted to like have a great guest experience for all the guests. But I think I got really lucky that I fell in love with the business. Like I followed my uncle around when I was 6, 7. He was in Vegas at Caesars, and then he opened Montage in Laguna and Bacara up in Santa Barbara. So like I remember just following him around at a really young age and thinking how cool it was that this business entity couldn't work without all the different departments. And like for whatever reason, I just thought that was so cool as a young kid. And then I loved service. Like I loved delivering service. And I like started as a pool boy and a beach attendant hammering in umbrellas at my beach, which was probably like the coolest job ever. You're getting like $20 tips to hang out at your beach. I was like, this is a dream. And then I did guest services, I did F&B, I did sales. And then when I first started with IHG was my first opening of the Indigo in San Diego, and then openings became, I became like addicted to the fun and the pressure of like building a culture from scratch, and how you could really just create this amazing team and experience from nothing, right? And I did that one when I think I was 21, 22, and I've done 9 now in a row. So it's become really my career. But yeah, really fortunate for the hotel space, hospitality space. I mean, I when the show was big, I tried to do a couple acting gigs, and the reviews were atrocious, and it was very clear that was not my calling. So I was like, "Yep, that's not for me. I am really not good at this," and kind of just ran away from that one.
Oh, that is funny. That is funny. I didn't see those reviews. I'll check it out.
Don't watch them; they're bad.
Okay, all right. And when we met, you were at HG, in New York, where you are today, and running a couple of hotels. And I mean, you've been very successful, from a very early age. When you look traditional, the age in our industry when people get to a general manager level, and at the time I met you, you had a couple of assets. You run an amazing, property that you can share about the transformation that you just completed and oversaw and relaunch. So it's pretty impressive to have, you're 40 now, right? I
Mhm.
think 40.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're a pretty young guy. And, and he already has, to your point, have many openings, been GM in several hotels. So it's pretty impressive. How would you describe for anyone listening? Clearly you didn't get these opportunities because someone saw you on TV and say, "Hey, right, this guy is famous. Let me give him a shot." You had to show your potential, deliver. So how did that came about, and what do you think differentiate you from most people out there?
I mean, I think this is probably now more than ever like the best industry if you want to write your own ticket from an operation side, right? Like I think when I started, unfortunately, and it's not the case anymore, like hospitality was like a really cool major, and it was attracting a lot of kids in college, and it was one of those things where it's like, look, if you can understand you have to sacrifice weekends and holidays and all the things that are hard to do in your young 20s, you can move up pretty quickly if you're willing to just to go all in, which I did. You know, I would move anywhere. I was all about the career. I wanted to try like branded and independence and do anything I could to just get the best experience possible. Um, but I think like, and the recipe for my success has been just like from the very beginning, just prioritizing culture and not compromising about it, and just making sure that everyone on this team loves being a part of it. Like, I think what I'm most proud about my career is there's six now number twos of mine that are GMs or area GMs or some VPs, and like I take a lot of pride of like mentoring people to grow in this business because I think now more than ever it's like we need leaders that still have that passion. Um, I will say it was like the first 15 years were a lot more fun than the last 5 years have been with everything happening in the world thrown at us. But I think probably because of that, right? The door's now more open than ever for talent and people that really want to grow in this business. And it's a great business that I always feel it rewards hard work. And um, if you're a leader that like genuinely cares about your people, but inherently like this business is about just making lifelong memories. And if you love doing that, and you can really differentiate your hotels, I think, from all the scripted cookie cutter brands of the world. Like, you know, at IHG, right? Like we got to number one of 500 hotels in New York, and that was like a 150 room hotel with very little amenities compared to the others, but it was just the right team delivering a differentiating guest experience. And so that's always just been my key is like personality hires. You can train anything, but if you hire the right people, um, you know, you can build a pretty rock star team. And I think um until I fail at that, that'll be my recipe for success. And um I'm too social, man. I love like morning stand-ups. I I think I'll always be an on property person for a while. I if I'm not, I just miss it so much, and I'm lucky that I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I got to see you in action, not only at the hotel, but conferences and engaging. And to your point, right? I think you have a very natural and, servant leadership uh, aspect that I think helps to build culture. And on your experience now there with Sofitel, where you went through a major property transformation, anything kind of that's different from kind of a new hotel opening from your experience, or kind of somewhat the same foundation to be successful? Any, I don't know, any new learnings, I guess?
I mean, this one was so this is the ninth time I've done this, but this was the first time I ever did it in an open environment. So that's just a different level of challenge, right? I mean, we did a 400 room renovation while open with all public space, lobby, front desk, the gym. We did a brand new restaurant. We did every single guest room while fully operating, right? So that took just like incredible execution from the team. I will say, like this team here, our executives here, like their fight and their pride for this thing is it's insane. I mean that summer, last summer, as you can imagine, was a it's a rough year to go through that. And I think when you get on the other side of that, I think any opening you have these really great bonds because you went through hell and back together. But this one I think was the biggest challenge hands down, and so proud of kind of the finished product because we really had to reset that culture in an open environment. We wanted this guest experience to be re-energized. Otherwise, it's just a physical renovation. Anyone can do that, and it will fall flat quickly. So, um, this is a company with La Maison, and starting like with our CEO that Mo Bailey is just like the most inspiring person that comes in and like truly prioritizes the people. It's not words. And so I think when it starts at the top down and you have the whole company believing in you, we're now the new flagship of North America. I think it's just like there's so much pressure, but there's also this high that we have now. Like we had the highest guest satisfaction scores in 25 years in this quarter, and we're just kind of cruising up the rankings. And you're starting to see people that have been here 20, 25 years really see the light, which is really, really cool. Um, this hotel is really unique. We have 50 plus employees that have been here since day one for 25 years, and they've been hearing about this renovation for years and years. So like to see them see these new rooms and to see the new hotel. It's just been really fun to see that kind of transformation from their pride and their culture, and then also for our guests and obviously the brand. I think I love Sofitel. I really want to hopefully see us grow a lot in the US, and I'm sure we will now. And it's just it's exciting to bring this thing to life.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And, great. I don't know. I think you guys done a great job to, I don't know, rebirth is the right word, right? But to your points, a flagship, amazing property, amazing market, very high profile. So I think, yeah, that's gonna keep getting a lot of momentum and keep building on that. And then, Dieter, to your point, you mentioned a little bit about culture, about the pride of the team, in your hotel. Many have been there since opening. And hotels nowadays, you know this very well, they're very challenged about flowing the profitability. Even though some markets are doing extremely well from a top line, costs from labor, insurance, you name it, has, have gone up substantially over the years. How how do you build that health culture while also being fiscally responsible? And I don't know, are there any thoughts or way you look at things that, okay, it's not every time investing financially to recognize people per se, but really building that health culture some other way that may not necessarily have a cost attached to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's really creative incentivizing you can do that. I think I've always wanted to have that be like a constant, but also constant in that we offer it, but inconsistent in that it changes a lot so that it keeps people engaged. And I think, we this whole team here is really, really invested in our soft metrics, right? And I hate that term, by the way, because it's like the soft metrics probably control the hard metrics more than anything. So we really prioritize those because that's what our team controls. They don't. There's certain roles that have zero control on our flow, right? And that kind of falls on our AC. So we've found ways to continually keep this team incentivized, engaged, like caring about our goals and seeing that, whoa, I actually control delivering on these. Um, I think growing up in brands that like are a little more nimble has been really beneficial because versus traditional luxury structures where you have like 30 layers of managers, right? And the GM's kind of just like this royalty role. I don't operate like that. We're lean and nimble, and I want the right leaders that are hands on. I'd rather have great leaders of 15 than average 30, right? So we have a pretty nimble leadership team that really is there to support and drives. And I think like the last thing is like no one's better than helping another department, right? I mean, this is like an all-in proposition here, and um, if you can do that and set that as a team, you're obviously naturally going to flow better. But I think nothing hurts flow more than just turnover and people being unhappy. So if you can, as a GM, it's kind of like your duty to make sure people love coming to work, they stay. We've had this same core here, and what I loved about our time with Atlantis Hotels and IC is we had that same EC for 5 years, and we were able to just expand as we opened new hotels with that same ownership group. And um, the longer you can keep those people, those great players engaged, the better off obviously you are. So um, I always just like to pulse check that thing and make sure that everyone is really, really driven, really united. And I think once you have that, your number two is ready to be Jim, then great, done your job.
Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, right, it's great too when you see people that you worked with that they evolved, they grew. That's means that you did a good job, and it's great to see that paying forward and seeing progress.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And I mean, I think like for any of like the youngins out there listening to this thing, I think you don't let anyone set a time frame for you, right? Like I remember when I started, it was like you can't be a GM till you're. I think it was like you can't be a GM till you're 40 or something crazy. And I was a GM at 26, and um, timelines are meant to be evolved and shifted. And if you're the right person, you earn these roles. And I think, but I do think the industry, it was a stubborn industry, but it's definitely like it's shifted. Obviously, like we were brought to our knees during COVID, and I think still trying to find its new place forward. And I think what I always say, what I hope that the industry can do a little better of is like we need to recruit kids again out of college, right? And our benefits are just like we're not quite there, right? It's like you're asking everyone to sacrifice, normalcy socially and all these things, but we as an industry, I think, have a huge opportunity to like reshift how we're thinking about recruiting and like who's going to be the next GMs of tomorrow if no one's going to school for hospitality or even wants to be in this business, right? So I think as years go by and COVID kind of subsides and then people can operate again, prioritizing guest experience, I think hopefully that'll shift. But I mean, I've never seen such a disparity in interest in coming into hospitality than at any point in 20 years, and which is kind of scary.
Yeah, yeah, and you probably see that a lot firsthand, and I see a lot from my side as well. It was much different when I began this journey. It was, a few years ahead of you age-wise. I'm turning 47, and but like you, I got into the business. Just, I got a great job as a room service assistant waiter in Brazil at a hotel that just opened, and I enjoyed the environment, the people, the energy, and then it just kind of carried over. And I think that's one of the benefits we have as an industry, right? The opportunity to really engage with different uh, cultures, different type of people, and the things you learn. I think, you're a great example of this. I think if you were to leave hospitality today, you probably could survive very well in many other industries, just because what you learn operating a hotel, you run a business in its entity, right, in its entirety. Financials, management, leadership, human psychology, everything that applies to many things. And I think that's what I agree with you. We got to do a better job to, showcase the opportunities. You don't need to be the smartest guy on the planet to do well in our industry. Just, being street smart, a kind person, a great leader will get you in many places that, and I don't think we tell that story enough.
Yeah, no, we don't, and I think we're gonna need to tell it aggressively, right? I think, now I feel like I'm on that. Well, now I'm 40, I'm viewing it as the second half, right? So it's like I want to keep developing leaders, and I want to keep growing like hospitality. I think like what always bothered me was the perception of U.S. hospitality versus global, right? And it's like we're cut, we're bottom line driven, which parts of that is obviously true. Um, but like I want the U.S. to be in line with like the service cultures of other markets, right? And I think it's, if we're being open, it's viewed not as such. And I think, there's a great opportunity there to just like keep pushing hospitality in the US, and I think you can do that with developing the light leaders. And there are great ownership groups that know that investment in human capital is going to drive their bottom line. And those are the groups I love working for.
Yeah, yeah. And talk a little bit related to that. Has your definition of success evolved over time? Let's say from your first GM job to today, as your career evolved, or not necessarily?
I think i think so, for sure. I mean, I think, you know starting in the business, I was just like so career focused on, that title growth and growing and growing and growing. And I wanted to be a COO by 40. And, I followed that career path and the titles, right? And I think when you chase titles, you're oftentimes making the wrong moves for the groups you want to be a part of. And I think I learned pretty quickly, like, there's companies I loved being a part of, like IHG, that I did for 10 years between two stints. And you value like the companies that you loved being a part of. And I love being a part of a core. And I think now I prioritized being a part of a company that shares those same values and culture. And like I think for me now, it's like I need to know the CEO, the COO, and the leaders I work with um, share in the same beliefs as I do. I think it's just so important because if you don't, if you could care less about the culture side of things, then, I'm a horrible leader for you. And that's just the bottom line. And I think I'm a lot more picky of who I pursue partnerships with. I could care less about titles now. So I think that's a huge difference, right? You start and you just, oh man, I just can't wait. Don't care. Um, I care a lot more about just like being happy, growing the teams, right? Being part of like properties you can be really, really proud of. I think that's the most important part for me. And if growth comes, then fine. But I think um, the awards and the titles that used to like wake me up in the morning put me to sleep now.
And I remember from your time at HG, you cleaned many of
Oh
those
yeah,
awards several
yeah.
years.
I think I was. I think it's safe to say I was probably like the most hated GM in our little group because I would have the awards and like take pictures with them, and yeah, lacking a little modesty there for sure. Yeah, don't care about that anymore.
Yeah, that is funny. Just remember now. Yeah, you clean up all the things year
Yeah,
after year.
yeah, we had like 3 years in a row, and then I remember just everyone rolling their eyes and being like, "No one's clapping anymore."
Yeah, they know what's coming. And like when you look about your growth, you mentioned, all your successes, and now to your point is more of fulfillment, other than necessarily title or anything like this. But regardless of how you look at growth, have you had any non-negotiable or any kind of discipline that you stuck with it throughout your life that supported this trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I think the part of the way I run properties, and I think for owners that aren't used to it, is like when you prioritize the human capital side and really trying to earmark a portion of your operational spend towards your team, right? And I'm not talking about like the pizza party stuff, like just having an investment and being able to do things as a group together off property. That's always been just like a non-negotiable, is like, you know turnover costs X amount of thousands of dollars. Give me a portion of that. I will save you money. Our team will be happier and we will deliver results. And like I think when I did the hotels at IHG, like we had an owner with Lance that was all about it. He's like, do it. Because he saw the returns. He's like, whatever you guys are doing, I don't care. Just keep going. And so I think when you go into groups that have never done that, that's really like it's like I just want to be open. It's important to me. Need to be able to do things with my team to get them out of here for a bit. It's not gonna, break the bank by any means, but I think it can be like this weird conversation when they've never done that before. They're like, well, you get, $500 for a pizza party. It's like, no, okay. This is why your turnover is very high. So I've that is one non-negotiable. I think making sure that like you're able to really control your your culture and your team, and having owners that respect that, like we have here, where we have a great relationship and the conversation is through me, and we obviously have meetings, but I think like being able to really like be the driver of for being protective of that team and how you get to that place you want to be is really important, because I think it's just a really 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 competitive time right now more than ever of just making sure that the people you have that want to be part of this business, you keep them here and you keep them wanting to be. So yeah, I think the non-negotiables have always been the same for me of, let me have that ability to really make this culture special.
Yeah, yeah. And what has been harder for you? It's kind of, and that's reflecting back a little bit on, Laguna Beach, is like navigating the public perception early in life, and dealing with, either if it's fair or not assumptions or what people believe you to be, or building something meaningful kind of behind the scenes to where you are now.
I mean, I think because I've just been fortunate in this career and finding out kind of a good recipe for success, I think that becomes something that you can duplicate, right? And it's never the same thing, but you always got to keep that hunger. I think the show is always it's always in the back of my head. So I think it's always a little more challenging where you can tell if people are talking about it and not telling you. You can tell if you're like prejudged, right? Um, there's been times where you're in a new company and you can tell people have Googled or whatever, and there's nothing you can do. And you don't bring it up, but like if it comes up, then you just, you have to deflect like what people may probably go to, which is like, oh, he was on a show and he thinks he's so and so. It's like, no, make fun of myself. Don't think it's anything actually, and haven't, ever thought it was anything better than what anyone else is doing. It was a reality show. But I think, when it comes up, you almost have to work that much harder to show your real side, right? And that's what reality TV can be really dangerous because you're playing yourself. You're not playing a character. So anything someone sees, they're perceiving it as like Dieter Schmitz. And in reality, you're prompted to say things. It's real, but we have a purpose. And so I think that can be hard where you're you have who you are as a person. And I mean, listen, I have nothing to complain about from Laguna. They edited me as the nice guy friend. There's people that had it a lot worse, so I had no gripes. But it is more the deflecting against the perception of someone on TV, right? And I think, frankly, that's what kind of like I thought a lot about doing this thing and talked to my wife a lot about it. And at the end of the day, it was everyone's going to go close this chapter of something special we did in life. They could either close it without you or you could be there and just close it together and tell the story yourself. So for me, it was like, sure, there's stories that come up from 20 years ago you watch, like, oh man. But find me an 18-year-old kid that doesn't have regrets. And so yeah, it was, for me it was like, look, I know that it's going to kind of reignite this flame a bit, but I almost like it because it allows us to close that chapter in the way we want to versus people talking about it and closing the narrative themselves. So yeah, I think it's definitely always been the show. It's always in the back of my mind of making sure that you work that much harder to create your own true narrative. Um, but again, like Laguna was special because these aren't people trying to get followers and trying to create drama. Laguna was lifelong friends that just happened to be filmed. So there's a portion of that show you just can never recreate again because that was genuine friendships. There was no social media. Like we didn't have to deal with half of the crap that everyone deals with today. Like on some of the interviews they asked us like, would you do it today? And I was like, absolutely not. Like I've like gotten down to some of the comments. It's like Dieter got old. Look at his gray hairs. I'm like, oh my God. I cannot do this stuff. I'm not built for this. Um, it's just a different world. When we did it, there was nothing. There was flip phones and MySpace. So um I think that's been the one big change for all of us doing it this round is like the social media aspect we never went through. We're going through it now. I'm like, oh man, this is like there's some mean people out there.
Yes, I believe that. I believe that. And by the way, I'm pretty sure your gray hair looks good, man. Just a reflection of all your knowledge.
Well, it's like some of the comments are like, well, they aged. It's like it's been 20 years. We aged. Like what the heck?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
The and you mentioned your wife. You have two beautiful kids, and I don't know if this was your first and only kind of, I don't know, first and only wedding. Not saying the right way, but you had a pretty unique wedding, right, in Vegas.
we
So
did.
tell
Yeah, I
tell about
remember
that. How did that
that.
came about?
So we like the getting married in Austria is far less of a big deal as it is in the US. Like there's, a lot of people that spend their lives together, have kids. It's just not like a big thing you need to do. And so we were like, we wanted to make it official in the US but we just wanted to do it with a small group. So we called in Lauren from the show, this guy named Ben, who's a good friend, a couple other people, just flew into Vegas and we did a drive through without anyone knowing. And it was the coolest experience, and it's still like probably the funniest story today because it cost you like order like a number 9 special, which is like the photo and the it's like 19.99. So it's like got out of a whole wedding for $20. But then I was like, I want to do the beach wedding. I need to do the beach wedding. I want to I wanted to do something bigger. With my dad was older at the time, and we really wanted to have those memories. So we didn't tell anyone for 2 years that we were legally married. Only those four people knew, and they kept it a secret. And then we at the Intercon in Monterey, we had our big wedding with 200 people. And I finally told my mom, I think like 5 years ago, like we were already married there. um, but it was beautiful. It was really unfortunate. My dad passed 4 weeks before the wedding, and so it was like a really crazy hard time. But we're so glad we did it because everyone came from Austria, and it was just like this really special event. But yeah, we technically had two weddings, so I get confused with the anniversaries because sometimes my wife wants to celebrate both, and all power to her.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. When you're talking about the package that you bought at Vegas, you brought back to the hangover scene on the high roller package.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my guy friends are always like, you had a wedding for $20. You're the only guy we know that wanted then a beach wedding.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Wow. Dieter, thank you so much, man. What a real pleasure to connect with you and be able to, relive some of these moments, learn a lot about your journey. Congrats on, living, I guess, a life, right? That is of high impact. You touch many lives, you help develop many leaders, and it's I always respected how you're a real guy, you're grounded, you're humble. And before you close, like, I don't know, where did that come from, right? Because you come across many leaders that are very capable but are not humble per se. And you have everything, right, not to be humble. I don't know, how did you sustain that, or where did that come from?
First, I'll say before I answer that, I've had a lot of respect from you from the day we met. You always treated everyone so amazingly and so genuine. And I think, everyone always had just every time you would come to the property or we would work with you, you made people want to perform because you had that genuine care. And that's hard to find in a lot of these roles, right? And so I want to give you a lot of kudos. You're a great person and great family man, but also just such a genuine dude. So always had a huge amount of respect for you. So kudos. And yeah, I think kind of it's to your point. I was fortunate because I had some really not great examples of leadership. I think where you grow up and you see like the royalty GM that is above talking to the team and above and I had saw some leaders treat people really poorly that were in layers below them, and I saw that when they left the property the team probably actually wanted to fail. And I was just like, you're treating your team horribly, and you think somehow this is going to help the business. And um, I just learned really early on, like if you can treat your team well, and more than anything, if your team knows you're like in the trenches with them and you're willing to fight with them, um, if something goes wrong, it's on you. That's you're the GM. If something goes right, you still let them take that win, right? But I think it's not an easy thing, but I think the respect factor that any human being has for someone that has their best interest in mind, but has their back and genuinely cares about them, that's been like that doesn't fail you in life in anything you do. If you're a self-serving leader and you're only caring about yourself, and you're going to be by yourself eventually. So I think um, that, and like the fact that I always get worried like one day I'll wake up and it's just like I can't do this anymore. But yeah, maybe I have one more opening and I'll call it at 10 and I'll retire at 45.
There you go. That'll be pretty cool. 10 openings, 45. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then you have enough to go your second round, right? Do something
yeah,
else.
drive my wife crazy.
Yes, yes. And listen, I think that's a great plug as well as an industry to have someone like you where you had exposure to, being on TV and you still want to be in the industry. Hopefully that speaks to, how cool, how fun it can be. And that's definitely a worthwhile career to consider and at least give it a shot, right? There's no downside.
I think it's a very rewarding industry if you're willing to stick with it.
Yeah. So, Dieter, thank you, man. Really appreciate it. What a pleasure. And I sure hope we connect again sooner this time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. All the best.
Thank you.